Do you remember when you promised you would become the best 24-year-old ever? Scott Pilgrim does. It's time to talk about Volume 5 Scott Pilgrim versus the Universe.
Whoa!
We're back.
Whoa!
We're back with Big Book Club. We're back on our Scott Pilgrim shit to talk more Scott, and we are focusing on a single volume this time, Volume 5. I am, of course, Sparkz Witty. Joining me on this journey is Bryan Lee O'Malley.
It's me, and I got our cat Gideon right here.
And number one Sonic the Hedgehog freak, Ben Magnet.
That is definitely me. Funny enough, I'm actually wearing a Sonic the Hedgehog shirt.
Man, I know him. I did not know he was wearing that. And I do now. I know this man.
He's always wearing Sonic. In some capacity.
Yeah.
Sonic always on his heart, even if he can't.
Or his arm as a tattoo.
I don't have a Sonic tattoo yet.
Oh, that's
Keyword there being yet.
What's the one I'm thinking of? What do you got? What's the
Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, there you go.
Genuinely, Ben, and I totally respect it. I know that like part of what you want for your wedding band in the future is tied to Lord of the Rings, but it shocks me that it's not more Sonic focused.
Lord of the Rings, I think, is a better choice if you ask me.
It is a better choice, but I'm saying like what's more pure to Ben.
Yeah.
Let's just say, hey,
yes.
Yeah. My fiance is fine with Lord of the Rings. I mean, she's good. She's cool with Sonic the Hedgehog, but I'm pretty sure for our special day, she would like more something a little more romantic than
like,
me playing Sonic the Hedgehog.
A Sonic one would just be like, well, yeah, but like it'd be like a really smooth, rounded one, which is not like the typical. It's most rings on guys, especially, are very flat.
Yeah,
he would have that really like round, circular bump.
Ooh, a bulbous ring.
But it'd just be a gold ring, like, be kind of cool.
Bing, bing,
bing, bing. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about Volume 5 Scott Pilgrim. Before we get into that, I'm going to say some corrections about things I've said before that I'm like, oopsie poopsie, I made a mistake. The first one I'm going to correct is that I suggested the last time we were talking about the book clubs that the Kim and Knives thing would be addressed later. That's not true.
That's not true.
It's not addressed later. And I will call my bad. I've read too many fanfic comics about filling in gaps and moments from Scott Pilgrim that were very well copied into Bryan Lee O'Malley's art style, where they live in my brain as canon now, and they're not, and that's my bad, and I apologize.
That's your headcanon.
That's headcanon that was created by other people that made me think it was real, and I'm sorry. It's been a little bit.
That's okay.
So I apologize for that one. The other one I want to clarify is more just a timeline thing, because I really looked into it, and Volume 5, this released while Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the film, was in production, which we talked about, like the movie not having the resources of Volume 5 and 6. That's partially true on Volume 5. It came out in the midst of them working on the film. So a little too late in like making script changes, but like obviously there are some gags, some jokes and references. Volume 6 comes out the same month that the movie does. And we'll get into like connections to the film in Volume 6, but like obviously like Bryan Lee O'Malley lets him know certain things that he's planning to do, maybe certain quotes, but the full picture was not accessible to them when they were constructing.
There's certainly way more reference in Volume 6 than I expected, so I think he might have gave him like early scripts or something.
Yeah,
because there's definitely a lot of shit in there. It's just obviously more expanded upon.
Right. Yeah. Certainly certain moments in the general idea, and like I think my understanding is that Bryan Lee O'Malley designed the Chaos Theater like in a sketch for the film based on where he knew the final where was the final confrontation with Scott and Gideon. He drew it, and they recreated that for the Chaos Theater in the movie.
Love it.
That's what I was able to find out. So just a little clarification on like where we were talking about in our timeline, that kind of stuff, who had what information at what time. That's it, I think, for the moment. Okay. Putting that aside now, Ryan, since you're the newest to reading this, what do you think of Volume 5?
Very, very good. This book continues to be a marvel. This is really where like a lot of the emotional stuff really comes headway, especially between Scott and Ramona. Instead of them like just kind of leisurely going through life, they're really starting to like think about what are we doing, and like what do I actually think about you, and is this like a reflection upon me, and all that kind of stuff. And it's really juicy. It's really fun. I'll be honest, I expected way more of the twins to have more to do. They don't have that much.
Yeah.
I was expecting like full last character arcs, and like they're great. Like they're more focused than in the movie. But like I'm not gonna say like that much. They're not even guys. They barely fight Scott. It's a robot that fights him most of the time. So like that surprised me a little bit. Not in a negative way, just in a different way. I was like, oh yeah, it's not. I wasn't. I was expecting more of like, like Roxy and Envy and stuff like that, like more of that. But like, it's a great book. It's a great volume. It continues to look better and better than the previous volume. The colors just really pop in all these books. It's so good. It's so lovely.
Yeah.
It's a great volume.
I'll respond to that and then have you go, Ben. Because I think for me, one of my favorite things about Volume 5 is it is like that downturn volume. We really focus in on a lot of our core character principle stuff that has been bubbling under the surface and is now present and really in the text and really front and center. There's a lot of big things that happen in this book for those characters, and the Katyanagi twins kind of serve as, I'm sorry that the comparison I can only think of right now is Harry Potter, but it is a lot like Half-Blood Prince, where I feel like the structure of like the big things going on in that book are kind of lesser because characters have to be pushed so far forward. Harry Potter's not the only series that does this. A lot of series do that. That's just the one that was coming to mind. But like generally when you're heading into the penultimate volume, that's when like you recede a lot of like extra details you don't need to spend a lot of time on. And like the Katyanagi twins serve their one big purpose, which is to like really bring front and center
the cheating stuff.
And that Ramona's been as much of a lousy hypocrite player as Scott has. And that's really all they need to do. And I think that they're well utilized. And I really like the interpretation of it just works for me. Like this, I really like the robots. I really like that they make robots. Is like their way of going about it. It just, after having him physically confront the others, aside from Lucas Lee, having it be this is a nice change of pace, especially with what we'll be heading into with Gideon in the final volume. Ben, why don't you go ahead?
As a penultimate volume, this is really good. This is where essentially all of Scott's emotional problems come to a head and life kicks his ass for once. The final pages are, they're heartbreak. I wouldn't say they're heartbreaking, but for Scott, who realizes he done messed up, especially, and even with Ramona and Knives, I actually kind of like how every time Scott fights a robot, like the Katyanagi twins, when they set a robot after Scott, the scene always goes to Ramona, it goes to Kim, it goes to someone else, and not Scott fighting. It's focused on a different character. And this is where I feel like we learn more about Ramona. And
that's true.
I mean, this is definitely where we learn more about Ramona. And also, like you said, it goes into her own hypocritical. Like she also cheated. She also is, or as she says in another volume, she dabbled in being a bitch.
I think there's a lot of really important stuff here. One of the key things about this volume, I think, is it shows how bad Scott is at being in a relationship, even when things are fine.
At being present.
Like, because everything else, every volume before has had like the obstacle, right? And that was part of the ending of 4 was like, I want to take this seriously. I want to do X, Y, Z. And like Scott can have those intentions, but when he's put to the test, he kind of fails over and over and over again. And that's a lot of what this volume showcases, is that once Scott feels like he's won the girl, he kind of doesn't know how to keep showing up.
Sorry, one of my favorite bits was, I wouldn't say favorite bits, but somewhere in the book where it really shows that Scott is just not all there, even though he's technically quote unquote won, is Ramona is telling him about like his entire day, and he's just like sitting there going, eating cereal. And then she leaves her phone and he just plays games on her phone the entire day.
This is very early. This is very early in the book, and I have it there as well.
It's just so, what is the word? I don't want to say relatable, but it's also just one of those things where it's like, what are you doing, man? Because even go ahead, sorry. No, because even just like recently when I was talking with my own fiance, it's like, hey, these are my plans for the weekend. And she was telling me her plans for the weekend. And it's like, all right, cool. And like, we know what we're doing. But then like when Ramona, I don't know if it's just me trying to be like, hey, this is how to be a better boyfriend. You talk to communication. Like, 'cause we all know communication is a big part of being in a relationship. And he's just sitting there like going nodding after she says, hey, I'm doing all this stuff. And even later on, when she's like, hey, do you have work today? And he just like nods. And she just like says, okay, I'll see you later, love you, bye, and leaves. And he just doesn't say a word.
Mm-hmm.
I found Scott frustrating in this one, but like
Yes.
that's the point,
Right?
Like
Yeah.
he can't even like, hey, like if you're not going to do anything today, hey, can you unload the dishwasher? And then he starts doing it when she gets home like 8 hours later.
Right.
Like, did you do the dishwasher? Yeah, I'm doing it right now. I'm like that's definitely relatable. I get that. And it's like it's frustrating.
And it's
like,
one of those things where like you can make the argument that like Scott doesn't mean to be this way. He doesn't mean to like be so absent-minded and forgetful. But also, Scott doesn't take the initiative to recognize the problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks he's won, so there's nothing to like fight for anymore, basically.
Right. And arguably, this is something where you can make a case that Scott's surrounding friends and the people in his environment have just kind of accepted this in Scott a little too much and babied him a little too much, rather than pressing for him to do what he ultimately needs to do earlier. And faster.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the introduction of the Katyanagi twins at the party with the robot, with the whole bit, and Ramona being just kind of over the concept already.
Yeah.
Of the whole thing, and these guys coming in and just super duper criticizing her. They put her on edge right away because they recognize that she has long hair for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like the long hair, a symbol of like getting comfortable.
Yeah.
He lied. Scott lied. He's not going to be the best 24-year-old.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Early on,
no. It doesn't start well.
24
does not start
well.
well.
Yeah. I love at that party, while Scott is fighting the robot, Kim and Ramona go outside, and then she gets a text from Wallace, and he's like, well, I'm like his personal secretary for hypnosis to Scott, and it's like, hey buddy, I'm a drunk for you equal Scott. And I'm like, even when Wallace isn't here, he's being silly, and I love it.
Yeah.
Kim and Ramona have a really interesting relationship in this volume as well.
It's one of those things where like, if I had a criticism about these books, like something that I really wish was different, it's that I wish Kim and Ramona's stuff here started heavier the previous volume.
Because like it does that. I mean, it kind of happens like
you get the beginning.
You get the beginning of it, but yeah, it doesn't really feel like it's followed through.
Yeah.
Which like I guess I don't need, because like I get it, but I do feel like we need more.
I think the challenge of that is that if Kim and Ramona were reasonably further along in that relationship, Ramona probably doesn't leave.
Yeah, that's true.
And like the story needs Ramona to leave.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's probably the reality of it. But like, there's so much good in the Kim and Ramona stuff. Like, it's unfortunate we can only soak up the most of it in this single volume.
They make out.
I agree with that a lot.
They make out.
It's
not cheating if Scott's in the room, right? I mean.
Hey man, parties get crazy.
No, Charles, as a former party man, I get it.
Yeah, I like that the dynamic and how it evolves for the two of them. Something I want to point out is that we're at this opening party. It's one of Julie's. She keeps coming up with themes that make people show up. I like that in this volume they're telling you up front how much like the actual fighting the X's is not important in this book, because Scott is fighting the robot in the background of all the important stuff happening between characters. And so like what's happening while Scott's fighting a robot in the background, Knives is finding out from Steven about Scott two-timing Ramona and Knives.
And that goes to show again, like Steven Spill's not really reading the room, not knowing anything. He's just like, you didn't know this?
Yeah.
And like, which, I mean, someone should let Knives know, but like, it's funny that it's Steven Still who does it.
And Steven's the person who says like, he cheated on you. She's like, well, yeah, but he's like, he was dating you because it was easy. Oh. As soon as Ramona showed up, that was that. And she says, I was easy. And he's like, yeah, he two-timed you guys and he acted like it was nothing. He's my friend, but come on.
Yeah. Is this when they're broken up, Julie and Steven at this point, or are they together at this point? Do you remember?
I think it's unclear, like nobody clarifies, but I'm pretty sure textually they're done.
Okay,
by now.
So he might also be in a bad place, and he's just like,
he is. He is. But like we also know that he's on his way to something else.
Yeah.
At the same point in time. So like he's doing fine. I think it is Steven kind of hitting I think Steven is leaving a toxic relationship behind, which was Julie, for a healthy one.
Yes.
And in doing so is recognizing other toxic things and unhealthy things.
Yeah.
And being as close as he's been to Knives up to this point, he's like, look, I gotta tell you, you don't deserve to feel shitty about him. Like, he's a piece of shit in this regard. And it's Knives bringing up the big question in the room up to this point. Does Ramona know? Which no, she does not.
And he doesn't answer.
Yeah. Super, super important for this book is that's going to come back around on Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really major stuff there. We also get this great bit. This is just a little further ways in when they're at their apartment together, Ramona and Scott. Scott has to go grab Ramona's phone charger, and he sees a letter with Gideon's name on it. And he has to just like shut that drawer real fast in a big slam and be like, that didn't happen. I didn't see that.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. Again, like, Scott is not really like paying attention to the outside world, but anytime he has an interest, he'll just yell about it, like whether it's about Pac-Man or Sonic. Like, there are multiple X-Men references that only I probably get because they talk about the Siege Perilous, which is like a Chris Claremont really dumb fun comic book thing from the mid 80s. And I'm like, oh my God, only like 9 people your age know about this, Scott. Come on. No one doesn't care. I
kind of like those bits, like where Scott and Ramona are shopping. Ramona's trying on some clothes, and Scott is just like, because funny when I read this recently, when I read this last night, I thought it was just like chatter from someone outside talking about it, but then like it was like, oh wait, no, it's Scott. Scott's talking, and it kind of shows how much Ramona's just like not listening and just not caring. Because I mean, you're reading the words in the bubble about something in X-Men, like when Wolverine got crucified on an X or whatever, and then it's just Ramona just constantly trying to close, but you can tell in the facial expressions where she's thinking about something else. She's focused on something else.
They're both like not really present with each other.
Yeah.
Through some of this book, and it's like it like you said earlier, like it finally comes to a head. Eventually.
And even when like Ramona, like when Scott's trying to talk to her about his band, and she finally just tells him, like, dude, I don't even like your band, and he's just like,
and it breaks him. And she's like, dude, it's really not a big deal, you're just not my thing. And he's like, because Scott overreacts to that kind of stuff really easily. We get an important part early on. Ramona says, how do you get over it so fast? Referring to Envy Adams. It's like a power.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't recognize, she's recognizing how Scott just has this ambivalence towards his past relationships, that she's like, they are very much parallel characters, but they're different in the sense that like Scott ignores carrying all of his baggage to his own detriment, like making his brain bad functionally, because he buries it so deep that he doesn't acknowledge that it ever happened and forgets things. Ramona's carrying her baggage around with her all the time. Literally, there's a bag on her all the time. So that's,
speaking of baggage. Knives runs into Ramona in the bathroom for like the 3rd time in these books, and she starts fighting Ramona, and Ramona's like, "Are you still fighting me for Scott? This is ridiculous." And then Knives has the great quote of, "You stole him with your advanced American slut technology. You're not nice." And I'm like, "You're funny. You're a funny lady, Knives." She just wants a chow down.
And there are two great things. Like, there's this beautiful panel when she slams Knives into the wall.
Come on and slam.
Which is gorgeous, but there's also the very important like broken lines on Ramona when she's told by Knives that Scott cheated on both of them, which starts to crack at their relationship in a big way.
The band has been recording an album for like 3 months, 6 months or something, and they haven't been practicing, and they practiced for the first time and they're awful,
terrible,
and they have a gig. And I'm like, oh man, this can't end well. And it seems to go like fine or whatever. I don't know. Like, people seem to hate it, but like Scott smashes his guitar out of like, I'm a rock star.
Kills the robot.
And of course, Scott's still out of the. And not only that, Scott's still out of the moment. They can't decide on what the song. So Kim asks, "Hey, are we starting on this one song?" And then Steven's like, "Hey, are we gonna start this other song?"
That's a good point.
And Scott doesn't say anything.
Kim counting because Scott's not paying attention.
Yeah.
So Kim Pine's counting in herself, and Stills and Scott are ready to play Erasmus. So they're just totally off.
Yeah.
God. While we're in this area, Kim has the moment where like Scott's talking about, because he's obsessing over it, right? He's going, she doesn't even like our band. What am I going to do? That means she doesn't like me. And Kim slaps him in the back of the head. And she's like, dumbass, she likes you. She's supporting your lousy endeavors. Don't knock it.
Yeah.
And like Kim's like, it's nice because there's this sense that Kim is warming to Scott and Ramona actually caring about each other. And like for the first time wanting to make that real for Scott. And she's like, dude, like, you actually have something. Don't screw it up, you big dummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which he will.
Of course he will.
I gotta tell you, the stuff with Kim, we'll get to it a bit later, but like, because I have never read these last like 3 volumes, and the movie did some different stuff. Like, I wasn't sure where the stuff with Kim was gonna go. I thought we were going potentially in a different direction with Kim.
That Scott and Kim might get together.
Yeah, and like they have like really sweet moments, which we'll talk about later. And I was like, oh man, is this gonna be totally different than the movie? And then like Kim's a sweetheart. Like she's like, no, I know you like this girl. Like, it's not about me. Yeah, we had our time when we were 17, 16 or something. Yeah,
right. Yeah, and like Kim has been a person who hasn't let stuff go, and we'll talk more about this in volume 6. But like, yeah, it's very much about Kim recognizing that there's something good in him and Ramona being together.
They work for each other.
Yeah. Young Neil like getting really depressed.
Oh yeah, just smoking
by himself
in a dark room.
Poor young Neil.
There's like a cobweb on his computer screen. It's just it's like, where's Steven? I don't know. Well, what do you mean? He's
band practice, and it's like, we're the band, and he's like, what? He just doesn't.
He's disassociated.
He's so broken.
Poor young Neil.
Yeah, poor young Neil. This good gag, this bit where Scott's nervous that Ramona's mad at him not talking to him.
Oh, right.
And so he puts Kim up to setting up a place for him to bump into her. And the thing is that like it actually charms Ramona into laughing about it.
Yeah.
That he would go out of his way to do that.
And this is after he slept over at her house. Because isn't that it? Because so like Scott and Ramona, like they have a tiff. And she's like, yo, we have a really small apartment. I just want some room for myself. All right. And Scott takes that in the worst possible way. Like, oh my God, she's going to break up with me. And he has a great line of like, oh yeah, I can go stay with all my friends who totally don't hate me. And they all just give him a glare. Yeah. So he sleeps at Kim's house. Holly sold the couch for rent money. So they had to sleep in the same bed together. And that's when I was thinking like, is Scott about to make a big mistake again? And will Kim be the person who like allows that? And they don't, and they respect each other. And I'm glad because like
so
I don't need Scott to keep.
Doesn't happen yet.
Doesn't happen yet.
At this point where we're talking about before he does the diner,
got it.
He's still able to sleep on the couch. Later when the couch is gone, it becomes a whole spicy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But I know where your head's at, and that's here, and like that's good stuff.
Oh yeah, Wallace is talking about like, so what's like, are you and Ramona like gonna get married? Like, have you thought about your future? And Scott responds with, future? Like jetpacks? Like, I'm like, oh my God, bro, you're so frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
You're right. He is frustrating, but at the same time, once again, it sucks that Scott is so relatable in this part because he doesn't realize that he has to you do have to think about the future. You do have to think about these sort of things. But for him, it's just like, he wants to like, oh, I just want to, be carefree and have fun, be in my band and all this other fun stuff. I feel like he's trying to avoid as much responsibility as humanly possible. Yeah. And he does have some because of his job, but it's still one of those things where he doesn't really want to deal with it. And
puts it off, and then he'll be like,
and like he doesn't want to think about the future. He just wants things to stay as they are because it works out better for him. But then, like when Wallace is like, "Dude, you gotta think about your future," because I remember when I was 24, and people were asking, like I was about to graduate college, and people were constantly asking me, "Is like, well, what are you gonna do about your future?" And I'm like, I don't know.
Still don't know.
Yeah.
It's this future's terrifying, man.
Yeah.
We got to talk about one of the big revelations in the book, which is that when they're sitting at that table after Scott's set up Ramona through Kim to meet him in public, where Kim is telling a story about how the person that she was dating, Jason, slept with her roommate behind her back.
The guy with the car.
Which triggers Ramona's glow and her lines around her head. And that puts Scott in a weird place, but Kim notices it, and Scott's like, yeah, hey, did I mention that we had a sleepover, me and Kim? And Ramona's like, wow, really? And she's like, he just slept on the couch. That's cool. And Ramona's like starting to tune out. She's starting to like go glass-eyed and not recognize everything. And Scott recognizes this as some kind of problem. And Kim calls it out, and immediately Ramona's like, what are you talking about? Scott's like, oh my God, you can see it too. Which is, Scott has thought that he was crazy this whole time. And Ramona freaks out about what's wrong with her head, and they say it's a glow that's going on, which is a huge thing, because we also have like, is this just like a visual cue for us about what Scott's seeing in her vision? And this finally solidifies that Kim's like, yo, what is that? That's a real thing. What is happening?
Yeah, it's mystical, man. It's mystical anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is your head glow? Like, we see the glow back in like what, volume 1?
Yeah.
It happens.
Like it happens in volume 1, right at the end.
Yeah. Like, we see that, and that's just like when you first see it, you think it's a visual cue to be like, hey, that's a touchy. Yeah, it's like, don't touch on that subject. That kind of, don't talk about that sort of thing, because it's a touchy subject for Ramona. Don't mention it. Don't talk about it. But now it's just like, something's going on. What is up with this glow thing?
And that really sets Ramona onto like, what's wrong with me? And really doing a lot of literal reflection. This is where she's like staring at herself in the mirror while Scott talks about comics stuff to her that she's not. Is this
the Colossus in Ileana? Yeah. So I guess like she got sucked into an alternate dimension when she was little, and the demon guy taught her all this black magic. That's Ileana Rasputin magic.
And Ramona's just staring straight into that mirror.
Love it.
And also, like, Bryan Lee O'Malley being a comic nerd, it's also, reflective of the moment for Ramona in like, and this demon guy taught her all this black magic and like Twister's soul, which is like Gideon did this to me kind of implications.
Yeah.
Really well written, really well thought out kind of comparison. Going back to young Neil for just a moment, we have the moment at the next party.
Is this like a wedding theme?
Yeah, who knows, right?
Because Ramona's wearing a dress with flowers on it, and I'm like, what kind of party is this?
And she bumps into Neil, and she criticizes him being with a girl who looks like Knives but isn't Knives. And Neil says that she's hanging out with Captain Homo, referring to Steven, which sucks.
Oh yeah, real quick, like it's like, it does bum me out that these came out, like the colored editions, and they put so much work into them, but they still kept all like the slurs and like the R's, like the R words, like mentally handicapped people. And like, that's something I think you could have got rid of after publication, reprinting this book. But you know what? Shit happens.
Yeah. I mean, at least in this case, like, it is directly in the text that like, Ramona says Captain Homo.
Yes.
Like, you're being an asshole. And like, at least it's directly called out.
But the R word's used several times.
No,
again.
I'm not defending that one. I'm only defending this particular use where like, I think people used a Doctor Who as a recent conversation piece about this, where like, I think it's okay when you're doing like, in that case, it's a misgendering.
Yeah.
But as long as the characters who are doing it
are
being directly textually told to you, the reason it's happening is because that's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
And as long as that's clear in the text, then like, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here with the Captain Homo.
Yeah. I get that part.
Moment. But like, young Neil has the really strong, like, after Ramona calls him an asshole, like, I'm young. I'll grow out
of it.
And it's like, oh, Neil, you're broken, my boy. Also, him dating a girl that looks like Knives is like,
isn't that her friend Tamara?
It's not clear, like, because we only see her in like these 2 panels. I couldn't tell you.
Oh, also, young Neil thinks he's hitting on her, which is really funny. I think that's what the line is, like, up here.
Yeah. Excuse me. You wish, young Neil.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Scott's drinking.
Yeah, Scott's sneaking a drink for Ramona.
Yeah.
And Julie's like, "Are you stealing liquor? Oh my God."
It's not what it looks like.
Yeah, which pisses Scott off. Because it's Julie calling him out, and she's always a pain in the ass. Julie really relishing in the possibility that Ramona finally dumps Scott. And yeah, Scott's really pissed off because she's hanging out with the Katayanagi twins, who send another robot after him, and Ramona's just done with it.
Yeah.
Like Ramona's just out on the.
Yeah.
There
I don't remember Ramona smoking, but I might have just forgot.
Yeah.
But
has she smoked?
yeah, she has.
Yeah, Yeah.
Okay, I
Kind of like
forgot.
trigger Scott, like when I think it was like volume 3 when she first lights up a cigarette, and then or volume 2, and Scott's all like shocked. He's like, "What do you smoked?"
Oh, that's right. No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. But this goes back to like the Kim and Ramona stuff where she has like really just good panel art from O'Malley with when she sees the glow and finally snaps a picture of Ramona's head so that Ramona can see it
with that old school flip phone from the 2000s.
which is really effective, and that leads to our kissing moment.
Oh yeah, they're all drunk and hanging out,
Mhm.
and they're all being friends.
Yeah.
And it's like a nice moment, and then
it's like a moment where like you get alleviated from the tension of things that have been ramping up between Ramona and Scott.
Yeah.
And they're talking about going back to school. Kim's all, we should go together. What will we major in? Ramona's like, dating, rugby, zoological, anthropology, shopping. And then Ramona's like, tequila.
Tequila.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me laugh.
And then Kim Pine, where have you been all my life? Make out.
Yeah.
Then they're trying to go through, or Scott and Ramona are like, "Hey Kim, you want to come home through with us?" And she's like, "Nah, I'll just go home my way, and then and also if I take subspace, I'm gonna throw up because tequila." And this is when the Katanagi twins, in a bold move, it's like, I don't want to say it's like it's a bold move, or a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it kind of does make sense because she has been by Scott this whole time.
Right.
And they go and kidnap Kim instead of going after Ramona. Because the next scene, we get Scott and Ramona, drunkenly making out, doing stuff. And then finally, Ramona finally asks Scott, it's like, hey, did you cheat on me? Oh, yeah.
On the way from that moment I just love when he does this. Just a full panel. All their subspace travel through the doors when they're falling down is really gorgeous art. And I love that when it's here. But yeah, go on with your point, because it's where I was going next, which is when Ramona finally asked Scott about it.
Yeah. And also you can really see the glow. I think this part right here is where you could finally see the glow. It's like a legitimate glow.
Yeah,
right,
a lot of times it's illuminating
because it's lighting the dark room. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
which you don't get as much in black and white.
Yeah, sure.
No, or not in black and white. In other instances, like when they're on the bus the first time, yes, it was dark outside, but the bus is lit, so you just saw the lines. Or even earlier, like when Ramona was outside and Kim took the picture, it was just like this bright thing you couldn't really tell, and now you could tell, like, oh yeah, her head is literally glowing. It's not just these funny lines, but it's legitimately glowing.
Yeah.
And it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, and like this is like these are some of the lines just straight that are also from the movie, but like you cheated on me with knives, I cheated on knives with you, and like what's the difference? Like you weren't wrong?
Yeah.
Well no, Scott, that's not how that works.
And it's a way more like serious.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, it hits so hard in this.
Where Scott doing the I've been trying to forget about it. You're a bad person. I'm a bad person. You think I'm a bad person? Yeah. Like Scott is struggling with it and saying he's trying to be better. Ramona says you're just another evil ex-boyfriend waiting to happen. And
I just also side note, I just love how the cat just sleeps on Ramona's side. It's like, nah, dude, you done messed up. I'm siding with Ramona over here.
Little G.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the really sleepy Scott is struggling to like stay awake. Ramona's wide awake, and he brings himself back out just to be like, I'm sorry, please don't break up with me. I'm working on it. And starting tomorrow I'll do better. And yeah, you do that. Don't break up with me. And then she's gone.
And he wakes up. No, Ramona. Also, no heartbeat.
Yeah.
You like that this is like one of the most like definitely like emotional scenes of the whole book. Again, like despite these looking like cartoon characters, like you feel like you see and feel all the emotion that these characters are giving us. And like so what you were saying earlier about the Katanagi twins, like we learn that Ramona did that same shit with those two guys. So like she is being a little bit of a hypocrite.
Yeah. In this case, she's actually in the shower in the morning.
Yeah.
But Scott gets the text about Kim being in danger. He tries to shout to Ramona that he's going to go take care of this and come back. Ramona doesn't hear it, which is the tragedy of this moment.
The water pressure's too high. I can't hear it.
Yeah. Well, not only that, when she finally comes out, she's like, "What are you yelling at?" She looks at her phone and it's just like low battery. She doesn't even see the text message. She's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Charge your phone. Charge your phone, Scott.
Yeah.
If you're going to use it so much, just charge it. Make it easy. Come on.
Yeah, this is on him. This is 100% completely on Scott. And like, he could have done better.
What game is he playing? Is he playing Snake? Is he playing like Minesweeper? What is he doing?
But even as Ramona is only taking a shower, she has made the decision to cut her hair.
No!
Yeah.
Which already indicates kind of like a sense of, I think I need to let go of this moment.
Change is about to happen again.
Yeah. So that brings us to Kim in a cage. And the Kadiyanagi twins trying to fight him.
I love their this is not what they're doing, but like I always just think of Neon Genesis Evangelion when the two robots have to sync fight with each other.
Yeah,
so they're punching at the same time. They do like a crane, like
I wouldn't say that he wasn't thinking about he did this because like Bryan Lee O'Malley clearly thinks about Evangelion. It's referenced more than once when he comes back for the anime. So
that's true.
Yeah, I would say that's not entirely far off. I'm just looking at my like pictured notes here. They're trying to really get under Scott's skin about Ramona and saying like, she'll abandon you, she'll treat you just the same. And this is where Kim is like really focused on wanting to get out, and she does something that I have mixed feelings about, but I like that every time I get to it, I have mixed feelings about it, which is that she tells Scott that she gets a text from Ramona. And Ramona says that everything's fine. And obviously Kim is lying. We see her phone. We know there's no text. She says she can't wait for you to come home. She believes in you.
Yeah.
And she just wanted to make sure you're all right. I mean, against the twins. And I'm typing back, come on, he's Scott Pilgrim, which puts a fire in Scott Pilgrim. And the Kadiyanagi twins cannot believe it because they truly believe that Ramona cannot change.
Ramona can change?
So Scott's able to beat the crap out of him.
Yeah.
Easily because he's fueled by that power of like, she still loves me, she still supports me. I
think unfortunately I think that is what Scott needed to get through this.
I think so too.
So like it is bad on her case. Luckily it eventually works out, but it's a dark choice. Like it's definitely like hits you with that moment of like, Kim. Ooh.
Like I remember getting this part when I very first read it years ago. And I was like, oh, yay. But then when I flipped the page and saw that there was nothing on the phone, I'm like, why are you lying, Kim? What's going on? But I feel like Kim had to lie because she knew Scott was in a bad place. And even though she's in the cage and she's like, screaming, save me, save me. I don't know why, but when I read this time, I interpreted it as her kind of pining for Scott in a way. Maybe not full outright, like she still has feelings for him, but she's like, great, I'm stuck in here. This sucks. I want to get out. This guy I've had mixed feelings about for years is losing a fight. Well, and then she finally figures out, it's like, this is how to get him going. And that's why she tells him, it's like, Ramona wants you to come home.
Yeah. I think there's an amount of, Kim is in this situation because of Scott having a relationship with Ramona. Like she's just a bystander brought into this. Like she's been suffering through the night for Scott's shit, and like while she has been warming up to Scott and Ramona definitely more in this volume than any previous one, and becoming closer with Scott because of it, it doesn't change the fact that like Scott still like broke her heart, and here she is being put through shit for his love, for his crusade. And so like, no, I don't entirely blame her. I'm just like, man, that's a choice. It's just a tough choice. And I do think like it makes the book more interesting. Like I have no problem with her making it in like a textual sense. Like I think it's the totally right thing for the book and everything. It's just as a character, I go like, Kim, Kim, how dare you? I think it's a really powerful like shift in their dynamic. And I think there's an amount of this moment motivates Kim leaving. Leaving town because she got dragged into something she never wanted to be part of, and it forced her into a position she never wanted to be in and made her have to lie to Scott
Again.
in a way she didn't want to, but felt she had to, and like that she couldn't be prioritized, and she recognized she'll never be prioritized.
Yeah.
And she was like, I gotta go.
Again, this
Like,
is like the second time Kim's been kidnapped by a man and Scott has to come save her, and Scott doesn't really want to be with her. So like I think that is like the breaking point. Yeah. Like
with the knowledge of Volume 6, we can say like that's not really a kid.
But I know, yeah.
Because for Scott that would be the narrative, but for Kim it isn't.
Yes.
So like
true.
this is the first time for Kim that it's been.
That's true. You're right.
But yeah, I fully agree. Like I think that is this is like that thing that pushes her over where she's like, I got too involved in this. And I do think you're also right a little bit in your read, Ben, where she like, because she's getting closer to Scott for the first time, there is an amount of her where she's like, oh shit, I still like him. And she's like, I gotta leave.
I gotta break off.
It's gotten really, really bad.
I gotta go. The Kim was like, I gotta go somewhere far, far away. The booties, my parents' house. Yay.
Yeah.
And I think that's even alluded to in this bit after Scott solved the puzzle of the dangling cage and got her out, which is what it says. And you get that last shot where he's like, Scott's like, thanks, Kim, you can get home on your own, right? And she says, yeah, sure. And there's like this panel at the bottom that shows her in the background, like walking away. And this is like, in a way, Kim's like, when he says you can get home on your own, right? You can clock with where the story goes later. This is the moment where she's thinking about going home.
Yeah.
And that's how she reads it. I also like him teasing up his own stuff with the Chaos Theater opening soon, so you're getting ready for the Gideon stuff.
But also,
right there,
like that moment, it's like once he's rescued her, it's kind of just like you can get him on your own, right? And like not even really thinking about it's a yes or no answer. Like he's already running towards Ramona because that's what he's thinking about. And Kim seems kind of like really bummed out. Like whether the answer was yes or no, it seems like Scott was kind of already checked out at that moment. I could just be reading into that, but. Like he was ready to go.
He's not seeing her anymore.
Yeah,
he's only seeing the Ramona stuff and being like, Ramona, she needs me. So I just got one more asshole to go. I gotta go fight for her.
Yeah.
And Kim's like, yeah, okay, yeah, go, get out of here.
Miss it.
Yeah. Which brings us to Ramona.
Your hair.
And Scott coming in and trying to explain things and telling her he loves her. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're from, as long as you love me. She says, I've done bad things. And he says, we both have. I'm a bad person. People can change, Ramona. And she does the Scott thanks. I had a good time.
Bro, that's so sad.
Yeah. And she disappears.
What? And then there's like 3 pages of that, or 2 pages of that. I love it.
Yeah. Just the white absence of Ramona, and then an empty bedroom and a cat that plops over, which is interesting. Like I remember the first time I read this, and when the cat falls over after Ramona leaves, I'm like, is the cat a robot? Why did the cat stop operating?
Again, I assume it's because like Ramona's gone, so he's like, oh no, my
person,
my BFF is gone.
It looks like he was like laying up against her, and now that she like vanished, he just plopped over and he's like, the fuck? Because you know how sometimes cats like do a thing, and when they finally fall down there, they like jolt awake.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, thankfully the cat gets up because when I was rereading this, I was like, no, kitty. And then
the cat gets up to leave, and Scott's like, no, come back. And he locks himself out of his apartment without his keys, which is the whole thing that started the fight earlier in this book. And so Scott doesn't have his apartment now. Well, so much for that.
The world of ruin, one would say.
Yep.
And we start getting more teases of, hey, here's the Nega Scott in his life.
Time to
showing up in the mirror.
Fully regressing.
Yeah, Scott's starting to shut down. He's crying at his job.
Oh God, yeah, it's not because of the onions.
Yeah, we even get the game over panel.
Yeah,
it's Scott's getting cooked.
Yeah, him and Steven are walking over to their job, and that the manager is like, "It's all Scotty. It's okay." He's like, "It's the onions. I'm crying because of the onions." You know, the classic, I'm not crying because of emotional damage. I'm crying because of onions.
Right.
I should start carrying an onion around at all times. It's not because I'm emotional, just the onions.
Yeah. And Scott is pretty much like, at first, he's just totally zeroed in on like, can you help me get a cat? How can I get this cat? I need to get this cat. I need a cat.
Doesn't he have like a bunch of people?
Get a cat? Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get a cat? You got cat food? All that kind of stuff. And
This is where he
this
spends
is
the
where
night.
he spends the night
Yeah.
in Kim's bed at the same time, and she says, I think I'm gonna move back home. And that's when he's like, do you know anything about cats? And that's all Scott gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's like really? I just told you I'm gonna move back home, and you all you care about is a cat.
Yeah. Just again, it's not looking what's right in front of him, you know.
Yeah. You get Stacy talking to him about it and being like, she left, she abandoned her pet, and Scott's like, yeah, and her cat. Which is a funny note in his own depression where he's calling himself her pet. Wallace is in his new place living with a mobile.
Yeah, who we don't do. Is it this
Yeah,
volume?
he's
we
right
see him?
here.
Okay, this is the first volume we see him in. Okay, yeah.
It's because he's the first person who we get the Gideon
Oh my
stick
God,
with
Scott.
where every time he sees anybody with glasses, he thinks it's Gideon because he got that one blurry photo from
Yeah.
Wallace. And Wallace is like, no, that's my boyfriend, Mobile. And he's like, oh my God, Mobile is Gideon. Because Scott's just terrible. And while Mobile is talking to him, Scott's just not even hearing him and saying, I don't understand him. I think he's casting a spell.
You're a funny man, but you're also ridiculous. Scott Pilgrim.
Scott sleeps out in the snow in front of the apartment and totally misses the cat coming by.
Yeah.
He's a homeless person who has a home. It's ridiculous.
It's so weird.
Now this is cool. We do get the bit where Kim is leaving town, and Scott is the person who sees her off, which is interesting. Like no one else is there. It's only Scott.
Mhm.
Steven didn't come. Nobody else came.
Yeah.
And Scott says, I'm sorry about everything. And Kim says, it's not your fault. And Scott thinks about it for a moment, says, I'm sorry about me. Kim says, apology accepted, as she gets on that bus. And it's like the first good step on Scott's journey towards improving is that Scott recognizes Kim leaving town is somewhat his fault.
Yeah.
And takes some responsibility for it, which I appreciate. We get the bit where Scott's parents show up.
Yay, they help him.
And they help him get a place.
Look at that.
Yeah. This is the first time we ever see Scott's parents too. Like, no, we see him in a flashback.
No, we saw him in flashback.
This is the first time we've seen them in the present.
It's not like a Charlie Brown situation where there's like a half on screen womp womp womps.
Yeah,
exactly.
And apparently they have money. They can afford anything.
These are the same parents who were like doing like a European vacation or something, right?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah. There's an interesting thing about like they'll give Scott whatever he wants, and it's weird. Like Scott's almost worse because like Scott does have wealthy parents who could support him even if he wants to be a slacker, but instead he mooches off his friends.
Yeah.
Who like are struggling.
Yeah.
And it's like they're like, do you want a car? How about a pony? And Scott's mom's all like, no ponies on the third floor. And
at first I thought his dad was just being facetious, just be like, it's like, I mean, we got to choose an apartment. What do you want now? A car, something like that, and just going more extravagant. But because that's how I read it. And then his mom was like, okay, stop joking. No ponies on the third floor. But if he was like being serious about, I'll buy Scott a car. It's like, what?
Yes, he is because like there's no room for like the sarcasm in this. They don't mind buying Scott whatever they want because they're not talking to him about, hey, Scott, go get a job or anything like that. They're like, hey, don't worry, buddy. There's a million girls out there. You're gonna find that. Like you just keep chasing that love, buddy. You just go out there. You do whatever you want. You chase that love. Which is why Scott's not raised very well.
Well, also the mom has a great line. You spoil him, and that's why he's so screwed up, isn't it?
It isn't my fault, which means it's like it's both your faults. We just also saw the mom like coddling him too. Like
she don't want to take responsibility.
But the funniest bit here is that
this is the best joke in the whole
Lawrence West, who is Scott's brother, shows up at the bottom of the stairs and he says, "Are we done here?" And Scott is immediately coming down the rail like, "Gideon!" and kicks him in the face.
He kicks his brother in the face,
and he's like, "Dude, I am your brother. Are you blind?
Since when have you wore glasses?"
Yeah. And he's like, since I was 14, Scott, you're so damn forgetful. Anyway, I just came to get my base, which Scott destroyed and hands him the case of, which it's broken inside.
That's like a 1, 2, 3 punch of really, really funny shit.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that on the car ride home. Part of me was thinking, is like you're on the car right away, on the drive away, you just hear him like, my base, and when he opens the case and look at it.
Yeah.
Speaking of opening things,
yeah, I really like that is our one and only appearance of Lawrence.
yeah,
We never see him again. I think it's really funny. I think it was a great use of him for the one-off gag of like Scott thinks anybody with glasses is Gideon.
we're all Gideon.
We're all Gideon. Yeah, so Scott finally decides to open that letter to Gideon that Ramona had written, and he reads it. And he's obsessively thinking about it while he gets a phone call, so much so he's not really paying attention to the call until Gideon is like, "Are you kidding? Oh, okay, you're not joking. All right, like we have a mutual friend," and he breaks the whole act, and he's like, "This is Gideon. When would it be convenient for you to die?"
Yeah. I would say that was a good line to end Volume 5 at too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like, what's a convenient time for you to die? And then it's just like, next time, Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah. You get like flashback energy of Envy. Yes, exactly. On the phone with Scott. And I think that's pitch perfect for like what we're doing here. Yeah, I think it's a strong volume. I think it's got a lot of that like putting the pieces together for that final volume. Moving them into their position is done really well.
Yeah,
I think putting Scott and Ramona's shit on display is done at the right time and everything. I think the only thing looking at it as a single volume, the thing that I really miss about it is like there's just less time with our wider cast,
the supporting cast.
And like in a way where I'm like, I get it. It's part of the point. Part of the point is like they're so out of Scott's life that we're not even seeing them. So when we do see them, we have to play catch up just as much as Scott on like, well, what's going on in your life now?
Yeah.
But it does make it like you got like Scott, Ramona, and Kim, and that's like what this volume is about. It's about those three people and really nobody else.
Yeah. I do, I do miss seeing all those other characters, but like it's not like I haven't had 4 previous volumes where they're just as focused. So like I think we needed this volume to be how it is to set up the finale.
100%.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I really like Kim. I really like Kim coming to the focus. This is the volume where Kim becomes one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Because of this. And certainly the next one as well. But like it starts here where I'm like, oh, Kim's like one of the best.
Yeah.
100%. Any other final thoughts on this volume 5?
I would definitely say Kim shines brightest in Volume 5. She has great moments in other volumes, but it's mostly snarky one-liners and just her general like whatever Scott. But in this volume where she she helps Scott out, but then she finally puts him in his place. Is like, dude, Ramona might not like the band, but she's here supporting you. Just roll with it. Be glad she loves you. She loves you enough to support you, and that's why she's here. She's not. I mean, it sucks that she doesn't like it, but she cares enough about you to be there. So,
right.
And now, even though her decision to lie to Scott about Ramona wants you to come home, which helps him fight and beat the Katyanagi twins, is still what I do agree. It also brings me like mixed feelings. It's like, I get why, but also why,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I 100% agree that like Kim like rose up this volume. She became, not that all these characters aren't complex, but like her complexity like really like shot up. With like her past with Scott, her feelings about Scott, her opening up to Scott being with somebody else, and like her accepting that, so much so that she's like encouraging again, like with the conversation you guys just had of like, yo, I will lie, like first I will lie to make sure Scott feels happy that it's a Ramona thing to save me, like whatever it takes. Because also like she doesn't want to be in a cage. What else is she gonna do, right? And like it makes me more excited. Then we get to the next volume where so much more shit happens, and it's like, man, like there's a lot of really good emotional stuff happening in this book. But that's for the next volume to talk about.
All right. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. I think it's another excellent volume. I don't think there's a bad volume in the bunch. Of Scott Pilgrim, and I think it's just a pitch perfect penultimate volume. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's also perfect that Kim is on the cover of the color edition for Volume 5, because I would say this volume is Kim's volume, and just all the other stuff where we learn about like where Kim is trying to help Ramona, and because I know what I mentioned earlier about how Kim really shines in this book, especially with the Scott thing at the very end. Also, I wanted to point out that she helps out Ramona. She's becoming Ramona's friend. Yeah. She's getting closer. She's like trying to help Ramona. And even when she agrees to help Scott or to do the thing with Scott is like, hey, I'm just gonna randomly bump into you guys when you're out having coffee or whatever. What the heck? Right. Weird power surge in my house. Yeah, my lights just flickered. I'm like, what the devil? All right.
Oh, there it goes. There goes the internet. I was wondering, how does power surge the internet still fine?
Do you want to pick up on your point, or are you cool?
If I could remember what my point was.
You were just talking about like this being Kim's volume, that kind of stuff.
Kim's volume, talking with Ramona, warming up to Ramona, and actually helping Ramona through her problems, and also even being okay with Ramona about opening up about her problems, because it's at the little lunch thing where she reveals that she was dating the other Kim, Joe or Jason Kim, and all of a sudden it's like, hey,
I know a guy with a car.
Yeah, the guy with the car, and she reveals that he slept with Holly behind my back, so now we're at odds.
Right.
So it's one of those things where Kim is, and of course this like triggers Ramona because she finally learned from Knives about how Scott two-timed him, and it's not Kim's fault, obviously. I wanted to make that clear. It's not Kim's fault, but also it shows that Kim is finally trusting of Ramona, or at least more comfortable with Ramona in letting her know about this thing that happened to her. Because normally Kim is very quiet. She keeps to herself. She doesn't express like what's going on in her life. She doesn't advertise it or anything, nothing. And she
even actively lies about it to the other bandmate. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. She'll straight up say, she'll like, hey, what's going on? And she'll just like say some stupid stuff and be like, like I was scrapbooking when really she was making the dress. She won't even say, it's like, no, I gotta make this dress for this competition that we're in and this thing that we're doing. So yeah, it's really nice to see Kim open up, and also, like you said, Sparkz, Kim becomes one of my favorite characters after reading this volume. I mean, I thought I liked Kim a lot in volume 2, where we see the history between her and Scott. But then as more volumes go through, it's like I feel for Kim because she's like, she kind of followed Scott to Toronto, but even now she's just kind of, I don't want to say laissez-faire about it, but she's over it, but maybe she's not 100% over it. She's just sick of his shit, and she is not going to stop calling you out on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You made the point at the beginning of this, what you were saying, that, the color edition being Kim's book. I want to point out, like, the black and white is Ramona. And I think that's also very apt. Like, I think this is also, just about equal as much as this is. While we've been with Ramona, we've learned more about Ramona. We've had more engagement with Ramona than Kim in a personal way. This is still Ramona coming to like the forefront of like her past, her life, her choices, in the same way that Kim's is. And I think it's very much like shared between the two of them. And it's kind of like their story, their narratives are pushing into Scott's to the point where Scott's own self-created narrative can no longer hold sway because he has to acknowledge their lives, their feelings, and he's not good at it, which is the whole thing.
It's true.
Okay, I think that'll do it for this volume, Scott Pilgrim versus the Universe, Volume 5. We will be back one more time in the Scott Pilgrim series for the final volume, Scott Pilgrim in his finest hour,
his final form.
Yes, ta-da! Scott Pilgrim's finest hour, Volume 6. We'll be talking about it next time here on Fake Nerd Book Club. Until then, you can check out all our stuff, fakenerdpodcast.com, all that other stuff. By the time this comes out, we've recently done our top 15 ranking of 2023. That was also our final episode of the Fake Nerd Podcast for the foreseeable future, episode 350. We are still going to have other things popping up on the feed, so please stay subscribed. Please be paying attention. We'll still have Basement Arcade Pause Menu, Basement Arcades, Fake Nerd Book Clubs to come, as I just said, with Scott Pilgrim, Fake Nerds Watch, where we're doing Monarch. We want to talk about the Scott Pilgrim show at some point. All these things are down the road at some point. You can learn more there by watching that episode, or probably by referencing a post that might go up on the website at some point. Until then, just like, subscribe, check all that stuff out here on the YouTube channel, on the podcast feeds, all that good stuff. Ben, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me not playing video games on my girlfriend's phone and just draining her battery at BenMaggot27, because I have my own phone. Haha. but it is planned, so I am on my fiance's phone plan. Anyways, you can find me at BenMaggot27 on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads. You can also find me writing for Fusion Gaming Magazine, Old School Gamer Magazine, GoNintendo.com, and playing Mary Frankenstein in D and Dark.
Excellent. Ryan?
You can find me having better internet connection than Ben, because you just goofed out pretty hard, my man, but we heard it all at DJ Tony Snark all over the internet.
And you can find me promising that I'm going to be the best 33-year-old ever at Sparkz Witty on Instagram, Twitter, SPARKZ Witty. And until then, and until next time, for the finest hour, stay fake nerds.
Ah.